I talked about how I didn't think I was an alcoholic, but looking back, I dabbled in other drugs, didn't care for any of them, or I figured out what drugs I could use or take that would mix with alcohol or that wouldn't mix with alcohol. But it wasn't until I was older. And like I said, there was just so many different times in my life when I look back now, and I still have moments of clarity now, almost 6.5 years sober, that I'm like, damn, I'm an alcoholic.
What's your recovery date?
It's September 29, 2018.
I think tonight it was me that needed to hear your story.
I grew up under shadows in a world so cold, where love was just a memory, a story left untold. Mama chose the struggle, Daddy chose the blues, abandoned by the one who was supposed to choose. But through the pain and struggle, I found my way back to a brighter tomorrow, escaping the black. Recovery's a journey. I fought through the night, from darkness to dawn. I found my light. Now I stand strong with my family anew. Love's not just for me, it's for all of you. In Portland's alleys, I searched for a friend, chased the highest sorrow, found it hard to mend. Catholic school couldn't save me from the chains, and all those empty promises just fueled the flame. But I rose from the ashes, reclaiming my soul. With every step forward, I relinquish control. Recovery's a journey. I fought through the night, from darkness to dawn. I found my light. Now I stand strong with my family anew. Love's not just for me, it's for all of you. I hold my head high, a story of grace. From ashes I rose, I found my place.
I've lived most of my life in Portland, a good chunk of it. But I grew up out in Durham, Freeport, Pownell area. Moved around a lot. And that's kind of where when I share my story, how things started out for me, because that was how my story began, was the biggest justification for my using. I have a large family. I was actually adopted within my family. I have a twin sister, and I have also an older sister. Those are my only two full biological siblings. I actually have a total of 8 all around the country. I was born in Fort Polk, Louisiana, on an Army base. And I refer to my biological father and mother. We're both alcoholics and addicts. My older sister, she's only, a year and a half or so or less older than I am. She was born on an Army base in Virginia. And then he got shipped over to Louisiana, where my twin sister and I were born. And our biological mother, like I said, was an addict, and she was not prepared to be a mother, and didn't want to be. And she decided that she wasn't going to do that, and she left while our father was on duty one weekend. So we were basically babies, and we were left alone while he was working for the weekend in the army. I had been abandoned, and that started those feelings of not being wanted and not feeling very good about myself, not feeling like I fit in. And we were very quickly brought back to Maine by family members, and finally my twin sister and I were adopted by my second cousin, who raised us. That's who I call my mom. I have siblings in Texas, Virginia, all over. My bio mom ended up in federal prison in California. There was just a lot of stuff there. And even growing up within my biological family, I never felt like I fit in. My mother adopted, like I said, my twin sister and I, and ended up raising us by herself. And our biological father had very limited access to us because he was actively drinking, an alcoholic he just couldn't take care of 3 kids by himself. And that kind of started the moving around a lot. My mother, by the time the adoption went through, she was taking care of us when she was in high school. She was a kid herself. So growing up, there was always this resentment. She wasn't around. I had babysitters that basically lived with us. And we moved from Pownell to Durham to Freeport to Windham to Portland finally.
And how old were you when you finally got to Portland?
We moved to Portland when I was 12 years old. It was kind of difficult. She put me in Catholic school, and because, she thought that going to a private Catholic school was going to be better for my sister and I. It really wasn't. I still moved around, I started out at Cathedral and then went to Lyman Moore in Portland to junior high school. Once I get into high school, I'd always been the good twin. I didn't get into any trouble. I got into high school, and just that's where things started to go downhill really for me. I'd always known, growing up, I was a liar. I was a cheater. I would steal, the little things, didn't think it was a big deal. And but like I said, when I started high school, I smoked my first joint. At that time, I was drinking. When I would go to family events, because I grew up on a farm before I got to Portland as well. The adults would be having a party on a Saturday night, and us kids would be all out, we'd be sneaking booze and going out in the field and raising hell. And and it's really kind of funny, and I always share this, that what brought me down at the end was not alcohol. So I didn't really identify myself as an alcoholic. I always thought that different periods of my life, alcohol was just normal stuff. It was kid stuff. It was, it was okay. And what I came to realize once I got clean and sober was that I always drank alcoholically. I was drinking before school. I was going to school, not drunk. That was my freshman year of high school. I thought that was normal, like I said.
Were there other kids going to school and drinking with you?
I found the people that did, that, drank like me. A lot of people have this defining moment when they took that first drink or that first drug, and they had this feeling. Well, I had this feeling when I drank alcohol that, it definitely made me feel better about myself, because I grew up being extremely insecure. And I definitely had a feeling, but it wasn't until later in my life when I found the drug that I really liked, that I had that I could breathe and I felt okay. but alcohol was always a part of my story.
I was the same way. It wasn't that I drank a lot, but every time I drank a lot. So what was that substance that allowed you to breathe?
It was heroin. So I used to call myself a late bloomer,
Okay.
because I became addicted to pain pills. And it wasn't until I was an adult. Like, I had all of these times in my life where, I talked about how I didn't think I was an alcoholic, but looking back, I dabbled in other drugs, didn't care for any of them, or I figured out what drugs I could use or take that would mix with alcohol or that wouldn't mix with alcohol. But it wasn't until I was older. And like I said, there was just so many different times in my life when I look back now, and I still have moments of clarity now, almost 6.5 years sober, that I'm like, damn, I'm an alcoholic.
What's your recovery date?
It's September 29, 2018. My family had an intervention for me.
Okay.
One of a couple. I've been through, when I finally decided to get help, I can't tell you, how many detoxes, IOPs, PHPs, hospitalizations I'd gone through. And, I thought I didn't have a problem. Everybody else had a problem.
And of course.
Yeah. And I had gotten to a place where that last intervention, I walked out of the last intervention. So I was at work. My stepfather, who I call Dad, is like 36 years in recovery. And I worked for him. And honestly, I was doing some pretty shady shit at work. All right. And, I was at the place of, I'm calling out of work. I'm taking long lunches because I'm like physically sick. I'm sick in every sense of the word. And I'm having my dealers show up at my work. And I know that there's cameras all around the dealership. And it doesn't matter to me because I'm physically and mentally and spiritually so sick. I needed to get something to feel better.
Right.
So when they did this intervention, I honestly thought that my stepbrother, who was the GM of the dealership, asked to speak to me. And I really thought that they caught me on cameras.
Okay.
And I thought I was going to get in trouble for that. And I walked upstairs to that room and I saw my mother, I saw my sons, my daughter. And at first I thought something else bad happened and they're just bringing me up there to tell me something horrible's happened to another family member.
Right.
And then I see my twin sister on a computer screen from Florida. And I saw the circle of chairs and I saw some guy I didn't know, and I knew what was going on. I've been through it before. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to shut up, I'm going to let them all read their lame letters and let them do what they need to do. I usually get emotional sharing this because my sons, they told me that, if I didn't accept the treatment plan that day, that I was dead to them. They wanted no more contact with me. And at that point, they're in their mid-20s. I just was so sick that I was unfazed by that. It meant I thought, whatever, I'm going to make my own recovery program and make it look good like I'd always done in the past. And everything would be fine in 30 days or so. Everything would go back to normal. I really thought that I was going to do it my way because my way had always worked out so well up to that point, obviously. And I walked out. I left. And I knew my stepdad, my dad, one of his things was, if I didn't accept the treatment plan, then I lose my job. Then I lose my car, I lose my insurance, I lose all of these things. And my attitude was, I'll get another job. No problem.
They were literally holding you up, and you thought, I can do it without them.
Yeah, and the interventionist, I remember him chasing me down the stairs like, Tracey, please, just think of it as a vacation. I said, I got a permanent vacation now. I gotta go. See ya. Bye. And I managed a few weeks. I went home to my husband, and who was actively drinking and using as well. My daughter refused to come home. She wasn't even 18 yet, just barely. She refused to come home, and I lived this horrible existence for a few weeks, to the point of like my husband stopped coming home, wasn't really there. I mean, I was out of my mind like crazy. There were times in that few weeks that, I just wanted to die. I really just wanted to die. I was just so broken at that point. I was miserable. But I got to a place where he finally said, you have till this day to get out. And I half believed him, half didn't. He gave me like a Thursday by 5 p.m. And I wasn't really sure that he would do it, but I was prepared just in case that day. So I packed up a bunch of stuff in my car. And sure enough, the cops rolled by at 5 p.m. on Thursday. And as soon as they rolled by, I hopped in my car and I was gone. And I was sleeping on my dealer's couch. And something bad happened that final night, and some guys came in the middle of the night, and I was on the couch. I saw a gun, and the guys all went into a bedroom, and I heard some yelling and everything else, and I just remember being terrified, and I was like under a blanket. And that was the night that I said, I'm done. Like, I'm too old for this. At this point, I was 47 years old. And I'm like, I can't do this. I can't. And so I called my husband. I begged to come home because basically I'm homeless. I'm like, I just want to come home for one night. Please just let me get a good night's sleep. I want a shower. I want my bed. And I'll call my dad and tell him I'm ready to go to treatment. And he checked with my daughter because she was in the house, and she said, okay. So I went home and did all of those things. And I knew that before I made that phone call, I wanted to have my bags packed, because I no longer wanted somebody else packing me for rehab, because they don't know what I want my things, and I want to pick them out, and I wanted to do my laundry. And I finally made that call, and I remember my dad saying, I'll be there in 20 minutes. I had no idea where I was going. He said, I'll be there in 20 minutes, and he showed up in 10 because he knew I was a flight risk. There was a good chance that I was not going to be there in 20 minutes when he got there. And that started my journey. That like I said, I had no idea where I was going. I didn't even know the detox I went to existed, and it was literally a minute down the road from my house. Yeah, and my biological dad, he's got the same amount of time of sobriety, but there's a difference between sobriety and recovery.
Exactly.
So, yeah, and I have the honor, and I've had the honor of the last 6 years giving him his medallion at our home group so it's pretty cool. So I went to treatment after the detox. I thought I didn't know, I was begging to not come back to Portland. I actually went to treatment in New Hampshire. And then at the end of the 7 days, they're like, we're sending you to New Hampshire. And I'm like, okay, I don't have a choice, because my family's the ones they're the ones that are helping with all of this, and I have to do what they say, you know. So I went to New Hampshire, and that was a struggle because I was like going through withdrawals really bad. You know, even though I medically detoxed for 7 days, I was not prepared for.
Right.
I was physically sick.
Just because we've gone without them doesn't mean we're prepared to live without them.
I went to rehab in New Hampshire. Stayed there for about 5 weeks. I was miserable, and I would go use the phone every night, and I would pick up the phone to call one of my dealers because I knew they'd have no problem picking me up, even though I was 2.5 hours away. And I would just stop and put the phone back down and be like, I have to do this. And at that point, you know, I was still just doing it pretty much to make everybody else happy. I remember the last day there, standing outside with another person and saying, I'm just going to smoke weed when I leave here, because I wasn't a real big pot smoker, although I had begun to smoke more towards the end of my using, but I figured I'd just smoke weed. And so they were sending me back here to Portland to go to an extended care program, a sober house. And I was really scared of that because that was 5 minutes from my husband's house and my daughter. And, you know, every step of the way, when I would have the thought like, you know, I'm good, I don't need to, you know, what would stop me was like, I had made some progress.
Right.
And I was starting to feel better. And I knew that I had a lot at stake. So, you know, I got a get well job. I went and worked at Hannaford's. It was recommended that I not go back to the dealership, not right off, because it was a pretty intense place to work. And so I stayed in sober living for about 16 months. I went to different levels of houses. I went into a house that was more of 12-step. So I was being more available and useful and of service to other girls in the houses. And when I was 6 months sober, a job opportunity came back up at the dealership because at that point I lost my position, but another job became available. And I interviewed for it like everybody else would. I tested, I got the job. And so at 6 months sober, I was back at the dealership. Stayed in sober living, went through the different sober houses. Best experience of my life. I can't tell people enough when, you know, it's terrifying. I remember in the beginning of rehab thinking, I am not going to a sober house. I'm not living with a bunch of women.
Right.
I'm too old. I'm all of these things. Like, I'm better than that. And it was the best decision I ever made.
You're still at the dealership today?
I'm still at the dealership. I've had amazing opportunities. I went from being the receptionist to working in the collision center as a customer care service rep to now being a Hyundai service writer advisor.
Oh.
So, and each step of the way was terrifying. And, you know, when we get in recovery, we learn to walk through our fears and, you know, it's beautiful.
Are you going to meetings? Do you still work on your recovery?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I do today, I have a home group. It's been the same. I've had the same home group for the last 5.5 years, 6 years. Several service positions there because my home group it fluctuates a lot. So I have my home group. I now help facilitate the family restored meeting every Wednesday night. I still facilitate a mom's meeting in one of the sober houses. I've been doing that meeting for 6.5 years and help facilitate that now. I go and I don't ever say no unless I actually can't do something. But I still go and share. I have a monthly commitment at the detox I went to. Yeah, I get up at 4:30, 4:45 every morning. I do my morning devotionals, my readings, my prayer, my meditation. And I've missed that one time, and I felt it all day long. I said, "Oh,
Yeah.
this isn't good. This isn't good." But yeah. So I have a sponsor. I sponsor other women. I continue, and people will be like, "Oh my gosh," because I go all day long.
You're
I'm
right.
like, "How do you do it?" And it's like I just do what I learned to do 6.5 years ago. Like I said, I didn't believe them, but they meant it. So what that looked like in the first 5 years of sobriety was my living amends, even though, they wouldn't pick up the phone when I would call. My living amends looked like leaving a voicemail when I hadn't gotten my cell phone back yet when I was in rehab and in sober living. I would call and leave a voicemail. "I love you, I miss you." And then when I got my cell phone back, I sent text messages. And I kept hoping, and I couldn't show them because they wouldn't pick up the phone and they wouldn't talk to me and they wouldn't see me. I couldn't show them when I was changing and how I was changing.
Yeah.
Well, it took 5 years, and my sons just came back into my life a little over a year and a half ago. And because they're in my lives now, and that's, it's progress, one of my sons,
Absolutely.
he goes back and forth, but I now am able to have some sort of relationship with my sons, and I now have grandchildren that I get to, I get to babysit my 4-month-old grandson now every weekend, and I get to show up. And one other thing, one of the beautiful things about recovery and sobriety is that my twin sister's in Florida still struggling with this disease, and she lost custody of her sons. And 3 years ago, I was asked by the state of Florida to take her youngest child. So I was working 50 plus hours a week, and on Saturdays, I was doing the certifications to become a foster parent in the state of Maine.
Wow.
And the day that I took my last class, I got my license, and my nephew Ryan arrived on my doorstep that night, the week before Christmas. So now I get to raise my nephew and do that for him and for my sister.